Please welcome Ryan.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my topic for today is secret addictions. What do we call secret addiction? How do we define addiction? When we talk about addiction, what comes to your mind? What comes to your mind when we talk about addiction? Drug addiction, or what else? What else comes to your mind? Somebody said that addiction comes from a wrong word or law that was due to a person who owed someone else something. Therefore, there was a way to enslave that person. And in that way, addiction has become today in a way that somebody become a slave of something. Are you following me?
Yeah.
So the person becomes a slave and he cannot control what he is doing. So also, it was a way of slavery at that time. Somebody else said that addiction is type of behavior that make harmful things to you and to us, regardless, family, or whatever is affecting us. And as well, they said addiction is a certain an habitual thing that can harmful in a different way. That's what I defined. Somebody here said that, and somebody else said addiction right there. So whenever we talk about addiction, we will see, for example, before, and we will see what? After. Let us see, for example, traditional view of addiction. What is the traditional view? Whenever we talk about addiction, as I mentioned before, we always think about drugs and what else? We always think about drugs and what else? And alcohol. And according to the Dr. Robertson, he said, why do we think like that? Because he said, drugs and alcoholism are related mostly with the violent death. In this case, whenever you see, for example, somebody got killed, or a gangster, or criminal things, usually it's because they're related with what? They're related with what? With drugs, is that correct? Mostly because that's the way we perceive or we see the traditional view of addiction. We never see, for example, someone, for example, who have a compulsive behavior acting in this way. And that's why whenever we talk about drugs and addiction, or whenever we talk about addiction, we think only in drugs or in alcohol. Because alcohol, for example, you with a lot of death in the road. There's also fatality down the road. But we can see, for example, in this graphic here, that they said, according to a website that I got this one from, that drug due more death in America than while it's dealing with death in war, let us say Afghanistan, Pakistan, or any of those countries. So people who die in America, the highest rates of death in America are straight related with drugs. And that's why we perceive drugs, in this case alcoholism, as an addiction. And we never think about other type of addiction. In this case, for example, when a behavior becomes addicted, how can you define someone who is addicted to something? We need to understand then how we define addiction. Dr. Robinson said that addiction is a behavior that is repeated in spite of the consequences is an addiction. A behavior who is what? A behavior that is repeated in spite of the consequences is what? It's addiction. How? What do I mean by that? Someone who repeats an addiction or a behavior continuously, regardless the consequences, whether they can destroy their family, in this case, can destroy your health. For example, you can see that she is in that situation, but she is still smoking. Can destroy your physical health, your spiritual health, or your friendship, and even your study. If a behavior is repeated regarding those consequences, I mean, they continuously doing what they're doing in spite of that can affect them physically, with their family, with the study of your future, therefore that is an addiction. That's how this guy defined an addiction. Therefore, if this is the case, anything could be what? Anything could be what? Anything could be an addiction. Is that correct? Is that correct? You guys have listened to me or not? So if it affects any of this cycle here, anything could be an addiction. even though we don't perceive, because this is the way that we perceive an addiction usually. So let us see right now, for example, when a behavior becomes addictive, when it changes mood and emotion. What do I mean by that? Let us say, if she do exercise to feel well, in the day that she don't do exercise, the day that she doesn't do it, she feels angry or she feels irritable. Therefore, she's no longer control the action. The action control. Are you with me? Let us see, for example, control and buyer. In this case, those type of addiction, mostly they have a same theme. Usually people who are dealing with the buyer, in this case, person who are addicted to buy, they have a low self-esteem. And also, they could be in a different circumstance. Person with this type of addiction could be because of they been lacking for many years in their lives, and they have a chance now, and they're spending over and over and over, even though they don't need it. And more so, they will be in debt. They will get credit card from this one, from this one, from this one, and spend and spend and spend. And that will affect their family. That will affect their friendship, and they will affect everything. Mostly those people end with a broken relationship because their partner cannot support that situation that they are going through. And more so, controlling behavior, Dr. Robertson says that in this case, people who are feeling inadequate themselves, they control others. And because of that, they want to feel power. They become controlling, and they will not let you even do anything because they want to have you in your control. Because they don't feel well with themselves, they will have control over the other people. Gambling. Usually people with a gambling addiction, they will do this type of behavior even though they know it's not the best way to dealing with certain circumstances. But people who become addicted to this problem, they will work and they will spend all the money they have, and they will become embezzlement. Embezzlement was the word that I used before in my presentation. Because what it means, they will take money from the sources that they get around them. And gambling provides sense of power, pleasure, and recognition. When someone gets one in a gambling game, they become recognized by other people. So they like that, and they feel well when they do that. So this type of addiction will lead the person in the same situation similar to the people or to the person who has spent a lot of money buying things they don't need. They will become in debt, and they will sell anything around them, in the house, cars, anything to keep doing this type of addiction. They also increase the insulation, and increases society. Do you think eating could be addictive? Could be an addiction? Do you think so?
Yeah.
Well, we don't see that as an addiction, do we? We don't perceive that as an addiction. Is that correct? Mostly with this type of addiction is very overwhelming today because you will see announcement, advertising everywhere about eat, eat, eat. People who have this type of addiction, they don't feel the same way, not well with themselves, and they are very manipulated people. They will eat a month of larger food in a shorter time than the regular people will do. So they do two things that the regular people wouldn't do. In this case, they will eat a lot of food, a larger amount in a shorter time. And more so, they will not eat just because they like food. It's not because they love food that they eat like that. It's because they usually have certain problems with the power thing, also with the pleasure. It's giving their pleasure. And more so, they are very avoiding responsibility. They like to avoid responsibility. They don't like to deal with their responsibility. And here, for example, we can see that they also have a lack control over their habit or their addiction. We also see that they are very distinguished or low self-esteem. Sexual addiction, they have three aspects of sexual addiction. And more so, we have relationship addiction and sexual activity addiction. In this case, relationship addiction, they are those who depends on a relationship to meet their need. In this case, even though those people who are in this type of relationship, they can be affected by several aspects. They can be physical abuse, they could be emotional beating, they could be also sexual abuse, even from their own partner or the person they are living with. And they marry people with alcoholics or any type of drugs, any type of addiction. What happened? Even though they have physical abuse, beaten abuse, or anything that happened to them, they're looking for intimacy in this type of relationship. They're serious about that. And the last one is sexual activity. This is the most dangerous addiction in the sexual aspect. Usually, lead people to fantasy, and they tend to get deeply involved to the point that they will act to a certain way. In this case, Ted Bundy was a guy who was executed in the United States, and he was dealing with this type of addiction. They want to have intercourse, sexual activity with one or more than one person. And what is unknown for them attracts them. They usually will be very related to homosexual, sadism, pornography, and that will excite them. They will get excited about that. Also, they will afflict any victim they get, and they will get to the point they will kill them. So that's what happened with this guy. So that is what we call sadism. In this case, the conclusion is, for me, anything that may change your natural way of behave can be an addiction. Anything that what? That change your natural way or our natural way. The secret addictions are not really secret. It's because our society perceives them, or our society or the media just promote them as a secret, but they are not. They are right there. And they will affect your family, they will affect your friendship, they will affect everyone around you. And more so, addiction is not only limited to drugs and alcohol. That's one thing that I want to be clear in this afternoon. And the secret addiction can affect and be harmful to us as other addiction. But thank you so much. Is there any question?
I just had one, Ryan,
Yes.
about, you were talking about the sexual addiction, and you said sadism and all, and then you included homosexuality. Is that addiction?
Homosexuality is not addiction straight, but it's the people who have this type of addiction, who are actively sexual addiction, they get exciting for that. They get exciting for pornography, homosexuality, and they get exciting more so for sadism. So it's not addiction itself, but they get excited about it. And people usually who likes this type of addiction, or who are inclined to this type of addiction, they get involved in any of those things.
Okay, I'm just curious because it's put with bad things.
Huh?
The homosexuality is placed with the bad things.
Well, as in this case, people with this sexual activity and people who are homosexual, they're inclined to be in this type of addiction. So it's not a homosexual in itself is a bad thing, but is related to bad things. That is the point in my presentation in this case.